Welcome to section 6.2, where we're going to focus our attention on factoring trinomials in the form of x squared plus bx plus c. Our factoring of trinomials is working the FOIL process backwards that we did back in chapter 5. Alright, so if you look at the FOILing of two binomials, and all I'm going to do is change the signs. There is a distinct patterns in the signs of our answers in our trinomials over here. So notice that the first two trinomials here have a plus 10. So if this is a plus on your constant c, that tells us that the two binomials have to have the same signs. Okay, well, how do I know which sign it is? Well, if you look at the middle term b, if it's a plus, then my two binomials are both plus signs. If my middle term is a minus, then my two signs in my binomials are minus signs. So this is going to kind of tell me already what my answer has to look like. I just need to fill in the individual terms. Next, if we have minus a constant. Oh, why my reds are jumping in there so fast. If we have two minus signs here, that tells me, look at the signs of my binomials, that both signs in my binomials have to be opposite. Plus and a minus or minus a plus. Now, the b term is going to tell you the sign of the bigger number. So here, since b is minus 3, then between the 2 and the 5 had to carry the minus. And if my b has a positive or a plus, then the 5 carries the plus sign, and the smaller number gets the opposite sign. The other pattern that we're going to look at is the pattern of f and l, o and I being multiplied together. So here's the f term x squared, here's the L 10. If I multiply the first and the last term together, it's 10x squared. If I take o and I, 5x and 2x, multiplied together, I get 10x squared. Same thing happens here. X squared times 10, 10x squared, negative 5x times negative 2x, positive 10x squared. X squared times negative 10 is negative 10x squared. Multiply o and I, negative 10x squared. Another 10x squared, another 10x squared. That always happens, and what that's going to do is it's going to create what we call the AC method of factoring, or the ABC rule of factoring. They're both the same thing. So if our trinomial is in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c, then you have to find two numbers that multiply to be the a times the c, and those same two numbers have to add up to be the b. And what you're finding is your o and your I terms. So you can replace your bx with ox and ix, whatever those terms are. We'll cut it in half and do our factor by grouping. Now, some number sense rules that you want to take in consideration when you go through this factoring process. You should remember, because we're looking for two things that add together, if this b is an odd, then you're looking at an odd and an even number. If that b is even, there's two ways to add numbers together to get evens. An even plus an even, or an odd plus an odd will be even. Remember, when you multiply, if your a times c becomes even, 2 is a factor of every even number. That will be important. And if a times c is odd, then the only way you can get odd numbers is an odd times an odd. Okay, so looking at some 3 examples here, and then we're going to start to create patterns and shortcuts for this ABC rule or AC rule of factoring. So let's look and say, what does my answer look like? I have a plus 12. Well, our sign rule said, okay, my two binomials have to have the same signs. What signs will they be? They're both going to be minus. So in my answer, it's going to be blank minus blank, blank minus blank. This is what my answer looks like. So now we set up our blanks up here. What two things multiply to be a times c? That's a 1. This is a 12. And we're going to add that up to be a negative 8. Now, here's how I like to work this process, because multiplying by 1 to the 12 is not going to change the 12. So start on the far right and read the problem backwards. What two numbers multiply to be 12 and add to be a negative 8? Well, if I'm going to add to be an 8, both numbers have to be less than 8, so it's got to be 2 and 6. Okay, make them both negatives. Negative 6, negative 2, negative 2, negative 6, order doesn't matter. So this becomes now my new b term. B, which is minus bx, gets broken into minus 6x and minus 2x. Factor by grouping, we cut it in half. Minus, minus, take out an x. I'm left with x minus 6. You have to have x minus 6 over here, so I have to factor out a negative 2. The x minus 6's are going to be the binomial on the left, and the x and the minus 2 make up our binomial on the right. Next example, we have a minus 20, so that means my two signs are going to be opposite, and the biggest factor is going to be the minus sign. So if you want to put right below the minus sign, say a capital B for big or whatever you want, that's fine. So we're looking for what two things multiply to be AC, 1 times negative 20 and add up to be negative 8. Okay, 1 times negative 20 doesn't change my negative 20. So when there's a 1 in front, I like to read it backwards. What two numbers multiply to be 20 and subtract to be an 8? Now, because I'm subtracting, I need a number bigger than 8 and less than 8. So 5 and 4 are not going to cut it. I'm going to have to go with 10 and 2. And because the 8's the minus sign, the 10 being the bigger factor is going to be the minus sign. So again, we separate it to x squared minus 10x plus 2x minus 20. Cut it in half. Take out the x. I'm left with x minus 10. X minus 10 over here. Take out the plus 2. X minus 2 in this binomial. X plus 2 over here. Wait a minute. I noticed something here. Do you notice that every time we find these numbers, they end up in my answer? And that's going to happen all the time when A is a 1. So we do not have to do this factor by grouping step right here. We can, once we find our numbers, we can jump to our answers. So here's how that will work. It's a plus 6. Okay, my signs have to be the same. My middle term is a minus. That means both signs are minus minus. Okay, here we go. Read it backwards. Because again, there's a 1 in front of your x squared. What two numbers multiply to be 6 and add up to be a 5? 3 and 2. They'll both be minus 3, minus 2. There they are. X minus 3, x minus 2. All right, now, I'm going to keep putting these rules up because I want to subliminally get you to memorize this. But again, we don't even have to use this right here. We're going to make this even shorter. All right, so x squared plus 5x minus 6. It's a minus 6. My signs are different. And the bigger number is going to be positive. So I am going to start putting x and x in the front right away. Notice in the previous example, they all started with x's in the binomial. That's because it's x squared. It's got to be broken down to x times x. So we're going to put down x plus some number, x minus some number. And again, if you want to put the big under the plus sign, we're going to go find our numbers. All right, so here we go. What two numbers multiply to be 6 and subtract to be 5? Well, if I'm going to subtract, one has to be bigger than 5 and the other one's smaller than 5. My only option is 6 and 1. Plus 6, put the 6 in the plus sign, the 1 in the minus sign, and you're done. Again, I'm going to keep showing you this so it falls into your long-term memory. All right, minus 21. Signs are opposite. 1 plus, 1 minus, and now the big goes under the minus. What two numbers multiply to be 21 and subtract to be a 4? 7 and 3. Okay, 7 gets the bigger number. As the bigger number, it gets the minus sign, so we're going to have plus 3 minus 7. X squared plus 10x plus 24. It's a plus 24. It's a plus in the middle, so the signs are the same. X plus something, x plus something. What two numbers multiply to be 24 and add to be 10? So both numbers have to be less than 10. It's 6 and 4. And it doesn't matter which order you put them in. 6 here, 4 there, 6. Doesn't matter because they're both pluses. X squared minus 10x minus 24. Okay, the minus 24 tells me my signs are different and the bigger number is going to go with the minus sign. So if you want to put a capital B under that blank, go ahead. What two numbers multiply to be 24 and subtract to be a 10? One bigger than 10, one less than 10. It's got to be 12 and 2. 12 is the bigger number. It's going to get the minus sign, so the 2 goes in the plus blank, the 12 goes in the minus blank. Okay, 24 is minus again, so it's plus blank minus blank, and the bigger number goes in the minus. What two numbers multiply to be 24 and subtract to be 5? Now, in this case, because 5 is odd, I need one even number, one odd number. So 6 and 4 won't work because they're both even. I need odd and, oh, wait a minute, 8 and 3. 3 is odd, 8 is even, and they subtract to be a 5. 8 gets the minus sign, 3 gets the plus sign. There's my binomials. All right, now it's x squared minus 11x plus 24. Signs are the same. They're both minus signs. What two numbers multiply to be 24 and add up to be 11? Oh wait, it's the same two numbers. 8 and 11 add up to be 11. Okay, x minus 3, x minus 8. Nope, numbers are starting to get bigger. X squared minus 20x plus 25. Signs have to be the same, and they're both minus signs. X minus, x minus. Okay, right to left, here we go. What two numbers multiply to be 75 and add up to be 20? Okay, well, they have to end in a 5 because 75 ends in a 5. Well, let's see, 25 and 3, nope, that's no good. That won't add up to 20. They got to be smaller than 20. 15 and 5. 5 times 15 is 75, and 5 and 15 add up to 20. Of course, they're both going to be minus signs. Doesn't matter which blank they go in. All right, next we have x squared minus 8x minus 48. Okay, signs are different, and the bigger number is going to go in the minus sign. So if you want to put the capital B down there, go ahead. What two numbers multiply to be 48 and subtract to be an 8? So I need something bigger than 8 and less than 8. And they're going to probably have to be even numbers because I have so many even numbers here. So let's see, 12 and 4. 12 gets the minus sign, 4 gets the plus sign. Now we're factored. Plus 60, the signs are the same, and they're both going to be minus signs. X minus, x minus. All right, let's find those numbers. What two numbers multiply to be 60 and add up to be wait a minute. Add up to be 7, so they both have to be smaller than 7. The only two smaller numbers I have that could possibly work is 6 and 5, but that multiplies to be 30. So in this case, I can't find, 12 and 5. No, that can't work. It has to add up to be 7, not subtract to be 7. Yes, it makes this statement true, but a positive 5 times a negative 12 is a negative 60, and we have a positive 60. So it doesn't make this one true. So that's not going to work out. We call this prime. If we can't find the numbers, it is prime. We cannot factor it. Okay, some more examples. Factor the trinomials. If the trinomials can't be factored, then call it prime. Prime doesn't happen too often, so make sure you double check all your numbers. We got a plus 36 right here, which means my signs are the same. They're both going to be minus, so x minus, x minus. What two numbers multiply to be 36 and add up to be 20? Well, let's see, 9 and 4, but that only adds up to 13. 12 and 3, oh, that adds up to 15. Wait, do we have another possible prime nope. 18 and 2. 18 and 2 add up to be 20, and 18 times 2 is 36. They're both going to be minus. Again, order doesn't matter because they're both minus. Let's see. x squared minus x minus 20, so the signs are different, and the big one's going to go with the minus sign. What two numbers multiply to be 20 and subtract to be a 1? Now, when we say subtract to be a 1, that's a dead giveaway. The two numbers have to be consecutive, one after the other. So this is 5 and 4. So 5 goes with the minus sign, 4 with the plus sign. X squared minus 7x plus 6, the two numbers have to be both the same sign, which are going to be negatives. And here's another special case. If you look at all the previous problems, the b term has never been bigger than the c. If that happens, it only can be one value bigger than c. So the two factors of 6 that can add up to be 7, it has to be 6 and 1. And they're both going to be minus signs, so again, it doesn't matter which blank they go in. All right, next we have x squared minus 7x plus 8. It's a positive 8. The signs are the same. They're both negatives. So let's, wait a second. What two numbers multiply to be 8 and add up to be 7? I can only think of 4 and 2. That's not going to work. Can't be 8 and 1 because 8 and 1 would add up to be a 9. Oh, again, notice that the only way to make that work is 1 times negative 8 would have to be a negative 8, not a positive 8. This one's prime. All right, if they give us multiple variables in our trinomial, it starts with x squared, but it ends in a y squared, just kind of ignore the y's. I'll show you how we set this up in our answer. It's a minus 45, so the signs are different, and the big one gets the plus. So here's what I did. Since we started off with x's for x squared, if it ends in a y squared, then my binomial must end in y. So I'm going to put them in there, and then I could ignore the y's. What two numbers multiply to be 45 and subtract to be a positive 12? One bigger than 12, one smaller. How about 15 and 3? 15 is going to get the plus sign. We'll put it here, so it's 15y. Negative 3. Negative 3 goes with the minus sign, so 3y. There's my two binomials. Okay, m squared minus 5mn minus 24n squared, same situation. N will leave it off. N's will finish it. It's a minus 24, so my signs are opposite, and the bigger number goes with the minus sign. I think we did this one before. What two numbers multiply to be 24 and subtract to be 5? 8 and 3. 8's going to carry the minus sign. Put that in the minus blank. 3 goes in the plus blank. All right, a slide of trick questions. If you ever see this phrase, factored completely, these directions indicate that you're going to have to probably look for a GCF before you get started. It means you're going to do more than one factoring technique. So as we start off here, 5x squared minus 5x minus 30, notice all the numbers are divisible by 5. So we want to factor a 5 out to the front of the parentheses, divided out of every term. Now you have x squared minus x minus 6. Now look at just the inside. It's a minus 6. Signs are different. Bigger number gets the minus sign. So my answer is going to be 5, x plus something, x minus something. What two numbers multiply to be 6 and subtract to be a negative 1? 3 and 2, and the 3 is going to carry the minus sign. So the 2 goes into plus. Now we're all factored. X to the fourth plus x cubed minus 132x squared. Factor out the x squared as the GCF. I have a minus 132 and a plus, so it's going to be a x plus something, x minus something. Keep the x squared in front. What two numbers multiply to be 132 and subtract to be a 1? Again, this means that they're consecutive. So a shortcut when you get a huge number like this is to take the square root of 132, which is 12 point something something something. So one number is 12, the other one's 13. 13 being bigger is going to carry the plus sign. No, excuse me, 12 and 11, not 12 and 13. My apologies. The square root of 132 is 11 point something. I had my numbers mixed around. So the plus will get the 12, the minus will go with the 11. There's my two consecutive numbers that multiply to be 132. Negative 3, okay, we're going to always want your first term to be positive, so we're going to factor out a negative 3, and an x to the 6th power, that's my smallest exponent on my x. Divide it out, we get x squared. 12 divided by negative 3 is minus 4x, with a minus 5 at the end. Minus 5 tells me I have one x plus something, an x minus something. The two numbers that multiply to be 5 and subtract to be 4, it's got to be 5 and 1. And the 5 is going to carry the minus sign. So 5 in this blank, 1 in that blank. Here we have a negative 2x squared. Make that a positive. We're going to take out a negative 2. That gives me x squared, then a plus 6x, and negative 36 divided by negative 2 is a positive 18. I have plus right here, so it's going to be two signs are the same. They're both going to be positive. So what two numbers multiply to be 18 and add up to be 6? Ooh. No. It's either 9 and 2 or 1 and 18. None of those are going to work. Okay, nothing will work, so therefore nothing's going to go here. Now, this is not prime. Because you did take out a GCF of negative 2, then this is my final answer. We did a little factoring. We didn't do the trinomials. So don't call it prime because we did factor out a GCF. 4x cubed minus 8x squared minus 48y cubed. Okay, well, they all can take out a 4, which gives me x cubed minus 2x squared minus 12y. Okay, this does not follow my x squared plus an x term plus a constant. So we can't go any further. We'll just leave that again as my answer. Gave it away with the cubed. Wasn't working. And that wraps up 6-2.